Here we go. Let's see. Good. Looks like people are starting to join. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. Happy holiday season for everybody who celebrates this time of year. I think today is the first day of Hanukkah, so happy Hanukkah to all who celebrate. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's an extremely busy time of year trying to wrap up all your 2023 fundraising and events and get ready for 2024. So we appreciate so much that you're willing to take time out of your day this afternoon. I'm going to go and share my screen. Brendan and Leila, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, we've got a busy day ahead of us, so I'll go ahead and get things started. So hi, everyone. My name is Danny Clough. I'm the Channel Marketing Coordinator over here at QGive. I'm joined today by Brendan Smith from QGive's Business Development Team, and of course, Leila Adnani from Philanthropy United, who's going to be diving into tactical tips to increase your event fundraising for 2024. A quick note before we get started, for any of you who maintain a CFRE credential, this does qualify for 1 point of continuing education. So if you're trying to grab a few more points as the year's winding down, make sure you take advantage of that. A few house notes before we begin today. We are recording the webinar, so everyone who's registered is going to receive an email tomorrow afternoon with a link to the recording, as well as the slides and a few additional free educational resources to help you take whatever Leila shares with us today and take it a step further in your fundraising. If you'd like to chat with us throughout the presentation today, you can use the little chat area and interact with Brendan, Leila, and I. If you do have any questions, there is the Q&A area of Zoom that you can add those into, but if you have any trouble, the chat works as well. For those of you who don't know much about QGive, we are an online fundraising platform. We have solutions for all sizes of nonprofits, including year-round fundraising tools, text giving, peer-to-peer fundraising, and auction tools. If any of those sound like they could benefit you and your organization, we would love to chat more with you. We're also super excited to share our wonderful partner network with all of you. One of those, of course, being Philanthropy United. Philanthropy United works with nonprofits to help them grow their donor base, their digital reach, and event fundraising by utilizing tried and tested methods. Without further ado, I want to introduce today's speaker, Leila Adnani. She works with clientele nationwide and loves making a positive impact on the world through helping organizations raise more money more effectively via technology, great events, and digital strategy. She has a track record of success so extensive I could not even fit it on the slide, and she can give you a much better introduction on her background and all the work that she's done across the nonprofit industry. So grab your pens and pencils as Leila dives into your 2023 and 2024 events.
Hello, everybody. All right, I'm going to take over and share my screen. Give me one moment. And I need to hit the present mode. Here we go. Can everybody see that? Are we good?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so I have a passion for events. I love live fundraising events. So if you're like, how am I going to maximize my online events? I am not your girl. But if you are looking to make sure that your in-person events are better than they were last year, and you're looking to figure out how did we stack up in 2023? How can I look and quantify what we've done so far this year and in years prior, and make sure that we're having some benchmarks to know that we're increasing our event experience. We've all been to bad events and we don't want that for our donors. And how am I raising more money through these live events? So we're going to dive right on in. I want to encourage everybody, if you have questions, please throw them into the Q&A. Danny will hop back in and jump in and ask those. I'm terrible at keeping up with chat and Q&A when trying to present. So please, I like talking and answering things as we go, and literally no question is off limits. So let's hop on in. All right. So clearly, you know, technology is a huge piece of events at this point. If you're not utilizing your event technology to the maximum potential, you're really leaving a lot of money on the table. When it comes to a large scale event, which is what I'm really going to focus on for this webinar, of course, I hope you have a strategy of small events and large events, but the ideal time to start planning a large scale fundraiser, which is anything that's over 200 people, is about 1 year in advance. If you're like, yeah, we've already surpassed that point, it's too late. That's okay. the sooner you can get started on making sure that all of these different pieces and puzzle pieces kind of tie together, the better off you will be and the more successful you will be as you continue to build that out. So obviously we are a QGIve partner and we love QGIve. We've tried every other software under the sun, and I can tell you some horror stories that I'm not even going to waste your time with. But I love QGIve because it's so easy to be able to set up our specific landing pages. So when, say we're planning, this is a golf tournament that we recently did. Say you're planning a large gala. You need to have not only a landing page on your website that is specifically dedicated to that, but on the homepage, you need to have a banner that easily leads over to that landing page. Through that landing page, you're talking about the benefits, you're showcasing photography from years prior, how much you raised, success stories, all of that. And then you need to have a very easy way for a button to take you over to your QGIve registration page. When it comes to designing your QGIve registration page, design really does matter. You want to make sure that these things are cohesive. So if you don't have someone who's digitally adept, you want to find somebody. And there's so many resources for being able to say, hey, here's the vision for what I want this to look like. Please create that. There's Upwork, there's Fiverr. Of course, we are a great resource when it comes to doing all the design. So, okay, we've gotten through that part. We've got the event landing page on the website. We've got our registration page. Now you need to be planning out your email sequence. I can't say the word sequencing. So what does that mean? Say you are doing this right and you've got that 12 months. How many emails throughout your normal sequence are you dedicating to talking about your big upcoming gala? A good cadence to this would be making sure that there is a CTA on all of your other emails that you send out, where you're keeping donors apprised of what's new at your organization. And then there should be some that are just specific in hyping up the event that's to come. So your first 6 months should really be dedicated to finding your great partners, so your sponsors, highlighting all the benefits that come with being a sponsor. If you're doing a raffle, your raffle, and it should be highlighting anything great that people can donate into your live or silent auctions. All right, so you've got your email sequencing down. Great. Text messaging. If you are not utilizing text to talk to your donor base, you are missing out on a lot of money, and B, a very effective form of communicating. I'm not going to get too far into that, but technology is excellent for being able to quickly keep up and push out those notifications. Another thing is you want to make sure that you're doing phone invitations. I know we all hate picking up the phone these days because it's so much easier to send an email, but I promise you, you're going to see a much larger ROI if you're actually taking the time to pick up the phone, chat with Mary Sue, invite her personally to join you at your gala coming up in the next couple of months. Personal emails, I'm not just talking about you put it in your constant contact or whatever type of software you use and then you blast it out. I'm saying you're literally writing, it can be a script, but you're personalizing it and then trying to add something personal to those emails as well that you know about that donor. And then a great lead up to being able to sell out your events is doing fundraising. So that can be luncheons, that can be happy hours. I just went to one last night, and it was to attend the party, you had to bring a gift card of $25 or more, and they told you what types of gift cards were best, and those were going to be then given to families over the holidays for kids who are battling cancer, to buy gifts for their families, to pay for groceries, gas, and all of that kind of stuff. Great way to raise, goodwill during the holidays, and another way for your donors to all get to meet each other and spend time together in a very low cost environment. For example, this organization's gala is a $650 ticket. So to have these smaller events throughout the year, which they have tons of, ends up selling out that event later. So moving on. If anyone has any questions, like I said, hop on in. Social media. I know this can feel so daunting if you're a small to mid-sized charity. Believe me, I've been there so many times with nonprofit leaders, and I hate to tell you, it is very important. So you want to make sure throughout, let's say, the year, that you've got your event announcements and that you've got them marked on the calendar. So I literally like to get a calendar out and be like, here's when the announcements for the gala are going to get plugged and played into our strategy. So you don't want to just be announcing, hey, we're having an event, we're having an event, we're having an event. We want to make sure that we're including some video content too. So if you've got video from years prior, start cutting that into snippets to be able to place onto social. We want mission-driven content as well. A lot of the times people are like, hey, I've got an event. Well, what is this event benefiting? Why am I emotionally getting attached to whatever your event is going to benefit? That's a big piece that I want everyone to focus on a lot more moving forward, because you need to give that heartstring pull in order to get that attendance. Key partnership highlights. If you are selling sponsorships, this happens, I think, in like 80% of nonprofits we see. You're not delivering what you promised your sponsors if you are not highlighting them on social in some capacity. And raffle people and auction people, if it's a tiny business and they've given you some great auction items, highlight them. It only makes you look bigger and look better and like a stronger part of your community. And then once again, biggest part, money raised at X gala will benefit Y. So whatever that is, we always forget to include exactly where this money is going to go. And that's a big, big piece of the puzzle. And then finally, your event countdown. We need to create that sense of urgency. We need to get people who've been sitting on the fence, who've been watching your social, to actually start to take action. There's also a great social media paid ad strategy if you're like, we really need to get more eyeballs on this, but that's a discussion for a different day. All right. I know I talk really fast, so I apologize that I'm moving through this so quickly. So now we're talking about quantifying. How can we identify the areas that need to be improved so that our donors have a better experience at these live events? We've all been to a bad event and left being like, wow, I can't believe I just spent $600 on this event ticket and it was terrible. So how do we avoid that? Because you only really get one opportunity to make a really solid impression, to keep people coming back, to keep people in your community talking about how great of an organization you are and the work that you're doing is. So you are right here at the event day, and this is where your communication strategy is critically important. So I want text messages. I want pertinent event information. I want to know what the parking situation is. I want to know who I can hit that phone number to call if I have a question. I need to know my event start time. I want to know silent auction updates. I want to know that the auction is now live. Over communication during event week is absolutely critical. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to annoy my donors. I promise you're not. If they've registered to come to your event, they want this information, and it makes you look bad if you're not giving them this information in the clearest, easiest form possible, which, as we know, we're all glued to our cell phones. A text message is best. Next, you want to have all of your team on the same page. This happens a lot, especially with larger nonprofits. The run of show document needs to be provided with very clear timestamps to every single person who's on your team, volunteer, paid, the whole bit. I even like giving it to my event coordinator at my venue so that they are very clear in understanding how this evening is supposed to flow and that they can share it with their team. So we're all united in one front. Main point of contact in your comm strategy. We personally use walkie-talkies, and we've got the headsets and we're running around like mad people, but it's great because you're able to quickly get answers if somebody has an issue or someone doesn't have the answer to a question over to whoever that main person is. And then everyone on your team, I know this sounds really basic, needs to have a very clear badge. They need to stand out. Are you part of the staff? Are you a volunteer? Are you with the charity? Great, because that means I can ask you a question and not feel really stupid doing so. You want to make sure that you're able to build that easy rapport and people know, okay, hey, this person works with them. Another thing, your FAQ is critical, and most people forget about this. And not all your volunteers are going to have the answers because they're not with you guys in your meetings day in and day out. So Givey, that's the QGive mobile app, which is awesome. And a lot of people hate downloading an app. We like to do an entire email strategy ahead of an event, explaining Givey, including the instructions, including the QR code, just to go and download it so that they're already set before they walk in. But we know that people procrastinate, and a lot of our event volunteer resources go to helping people figure out how to bid. So make sure your team is really well versed on this, no matter what software you're using, because if they're not able to bid and it's not simple and there's not concerted people there to help them, then you're leaving a lot of money on the table. So here's some of the most frequently asked questions that we get at pretty much every event. And the valet included. Funny story. We were told it was included. So we were telling everybody it was included. The guests went out to the valet, and apparently the event coordinator hadn't told the valet team that it was included, and people got charged. And we had to do, I think it was like we PayPal'd hundreds of people back for their parking because they were pissed. And it was $5. It wasn't anything crazy, but The fact that that snafu in communication happened led to a lot of angry donors leaving after what was a very successful event. So just a PTSD story from our side that I don't want to happen to you guys. All right, moving on. During, you've got to have your check-in process locked and loaded, which means you need to run through all of this with whoever's handling check-in. Most of the time, that's going to be your volunteers. The system is not confusing if you've used it before, but there are intricacies to it. And if you're selling raffle tickets right there and then, you need to make sure that everybody understands how to be able to purchase raffle tickets during the check-in process so that it's easier for the donor. You also want people standing near your raffles and auction items so that they can help people answer questions, help them with bidding, whatever it might be. If you have an older donor audience, this is incredibly important. Social strategy, you've got to have one person on your team at minimum live posting the entire event to all of your different platforms. A lot of the times we're so busy in event mode and everybody's hands on deck that you kind of forget to be capturing the essence of the moment, how beautiful all these different aspects that have come together are. So find one person. Like for this golf tournament, we had a volunteer and she loves social and she did an excellent job. Every single sponsor was tagged multiple times. Every auction item, the business was tagged. Every sponsor at each of these holes were tagged. She was getting behind the scenes content. I mean, really knocked it out of the park. It makes a big difference. And then you want to make sure that you've got a good volunteer guest engagement strategy. Every single person needs to be touched by someone within the organization during the event. And I know if you've got 600 people, that sounds pretty daunting, but I promise that just means you need more folks who are volunteer day of so that everyone feels seen. We want our donors to come back for every year from this one moving forward. And that touch point, as you know, when someone makes you feel special and feeling that sense of gratitude that you took time out of your busy life to show up and support X, Y, and Z nonprofit, that means a lot. So I'm just going over some of the things that we tend to forget. All right. This is where the ship usually starts to fall apart, is checkout. So you need to decide exactly how you're doing this. In our experience, after you finished your live auction, you give people another 10, 15 minutes to finish out with their silent auction and raffles. As you're calling the raffles, the silent auction, we usually keep it open. And then once raffles, however long that takes, are done, then we know that the auction is done. You've got options here. We like to physically get that list of who's won what and announce, congratulations to Susie, you've won blank auction item. And make sure that it's really clear as to where all of these items will be, how people can come and check out, retrieve their items, and continue on their way and head home. This is usually done best at the end of your evening, but you need to allot A, enough staff for it, and B, you need to make sure that the lines don't back up, right? You don't want people waiting in line to get into your event, and you don't want people waiting in line to get out of your event to be able to go home, get to valet, and continue on with their evening. You need to have a text sequence. So I would say after the doors have closed, 30 minutes to 45 minutes, they should be getting a thank you for attending, get home safe. We appreciate your support. Love X, Y, and Z nonprofit. That goes a long way. I'm going to be sharing for free our 3-day post-event email sequence. So I'll make sure that that gets sent out tomorrow with this recording. But this is a great opportunity to bring in a little bit more revenue. So we like to keep our event fundraising page open for 3 days after the event so we can capture additional donations from people who are really moved by our programming. And for the people who weren't able to attend, we're also emailing them. We're emailing pretty much your entire list. And half of it is kind of an assuming email of thank you so much for being a part of this. Here's what we were able to accomplish. And then giving those folks who weren't there that opportunity to be a part of the event's success. It's been statistically proven that people love attaching themselves to successful endeavors, and your nonprofit success is something that people take personally because they know that every dollar they give is helping move that needle in whatever it is that you're doing. All right, moving on. So post, you're closing down your site, you're doing your financial final audits, personal thank you cards should be handwritten and mailed. You should do this for all attendees, vendors, and volunteers. The easiest way to split this up is Someone's handling attendees, someone's handling the vendors, and someone's handling the volunteers. Don't put this all on one person's plate. That's exhausting. Next, personalized email thank yous to your largest donors from the evening. And then you need to have your social media pretty much going crazy. You shouldn't be focused on anything else in social for that week after your event, except for everything that's rehashing how successful your evening was. So you want all the fun pictures that you've gotten back from photography. If you hired videography, you want to get that video back, highlight that. That should also go out in an email if it's ready within those first 3 days. If not, include it in an email later on. A lot of the times we'll get back all of these amazing photos and videos and we're already on to the next thing. And we are leaving all these amazing assets on the table and we're not fully utilizing them. And you paid for this. People paid to show up. They want to see themselves out there having fun. And it further shows the success of what you and your team have put together. So don't forget about that. And if you're really on top of it, I would love if you're announcing your event date for the following year so that people can already put it onto their calendars, know, and get ready. If someone at your event expressed, next year, I'm definitely going to sponsor. Make sure you've got lists of those folks that you can reach out and say, hey, we would love to talk to you about sponsoring for next year. We've got the packet ready. We would love for you to be included so that we can start promoting you ASAP as being a new sponsor for the 2024 event, 2025 event, that kind of thing. So like I said, I will give you guys all these emails and then all you need to do is plug and play and throw in your data. Here's a copy of them, which you'll get later. Okay, post. You need to remember that you're saying a million times how you are using these funds. So, example here, with your generosity, we raised $100,000, which saves 10,000 cats and dogs from euthanasia. Being very, very clear. We need data. We need numbers. We need to really understand. It cannot be vague. If you're vague, you're doing your donors a disservice and you're also doing your next year's event a disservice. I've personally worked with some nonprofits that never end up telling us afterwards where the money went and why they do that. I don't know. I don't run the nonprofit, but it's one of my personal pet peeves and it's something that's really easy for us to all get better at. So this is where it gets nerdy. My team and I in 2019 decided that we wanted to be able to quantify live events. And as we know, there's so many different factors that go into a live event. How are we going to put data behind this to track and see how organizations are progressing year over year? So we created an 800-point event audit. Keep in mind, not all of these points are applicable in all situations, but we tried to be really exhaustive. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek of what that looks like. You can apply this to your nonprofit with relative ease. So for example, here we go, check-in to ticketing. You're giving a score. Check-in donations. Was it easy for people to make a cash donation at the door? Did all of your staff include their raffle tickets upon that check-in? Did you use a program? How was the programming of the event? Were there great photo opportunities? You want to make sure that you're including all of that because as we know, social media is everywhere. And number two, you want to create that sense of fear of missing out so that the folks who didn't make it are now like, oh man, that was the event of the year in this town. I need to make sure that I'm there next year as my friends are posting all of these great pictures and videos from that night. Your room flow. I mean, it gets really, really down and dirty into every aspect of your event. Okay, that I think is duplicated, but I am going to let it sit here. And if you have any questions, please jump in and ask me. Like I said, the audit is something that you can put together of what are the most critical pieces of our event and tailor it to whatever it is. Ours is kind of more tailored for that really large scale fundraising. And I can pull up 1 second, kind of what this dives into a little bit more so you guys can see that. How do I make you bigger? I'm not sure. So here's kind of what the calculation looks like. You've got your communication for logistics, which is a really big deal. Your during event comms, your logistics during your event, your guest experience. So that is a big deal. You need to be able to rate the type of food that you've been given so that you're able to quantify how good was this venue for this event. How long was your food and beverage wait time? Your donors don't want to wait in line to be able to get a drink. So how can you create an environment that's very conducive to them having a very good time. And then your programming. This is one of those things that I could go on about and do an entirely different webinar on, but you need to be very thoughtful in how you put together that programming. And you need to have someone who's a good public speaker on that stage. So that might not be the leader of the nonprofit. Sometimes that really isn't, but there's probably someone on the team or an MC that you can hire who's going to be really good at revving your audience up to be able to get those donation dollars to flow through. You've got your post event, and there you go. You've got your final score. And like I said, this doesn't have to be 800 points. This can be cut down to where you're only utilizing the things that really mattered. But at that point, you can take a look and say, here's what our score was for this event that we do every year in 2022. Here's what it was in 2023. Now in 2024, we want to make sure that we're maximizing all of these different areas because your donor experience is critical to being able to raise more money. So anyways, that's me finishing up talking. Any questions?
Thanks, Leila. Sorry, Brendan, you go.
I was going to say, I love a good checklist. That was extensive. I hadn't seen the full thing. That's awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Danny,
it's great. We typically, for new clients, they'll say, can you attend our event? Can someone from the team come and audit the entire thing? And of course, if we're not involved with the pre-planning of it, we've got questionnaires that we can send to try and get a gauge of what was happening ahead of time. If we're not on your email list, your social and all that, we don't know. But it gives a really good playbook after. And then we put together a comprehensive report that all of your executive team can review and say, okay, here's where we fell short. This is based on what the experts have seen and put together, kind of where the data is leading. And now we know exactly what we can improve in the future. Like I remember one event, they didn't have great Wi-Fi. And what happens if we don't have great Wi-Fi and we've got tons of people in a room? We're not bidding and it's got this lag time. And that was a disaster for them in terms of being able to make that extra money with, the 3-second countdown on those auction items.
Absolutely. But we see that all the time. Unfortunately, people, they don't think about those things as it relates to the technology they're using on site. And sometimes it does fall flat, which can severely impact the overall ROI, which we all know. The other two things that I wanted to spend a little time on it as we're looking at questions, Danny, was there were two. One was the power of FOMO. If you can speak to more of that, because I think that's a huge component. I know I've sponsored events the next year because I saw, just like you said, Instagrammable things or things out there on social that I couldn't miss again next year. So if we could speak a little bit more to that and maybe some advice to the audience on how they can create those events that can really be used to leverage that FOMO as a starting point, and then we'll get into the next stuff.
So first and foremost, I love video content for creating FOMO because your digital team gets to really create the narrative from everything captured to make that FOMO reality. It's showcasing all of your donors having an amazing time, showcasing how beautiful the entire event is, how well executed. If you've got an auctioneer, you've got great clips of them just like raising a ton of money. And then you've got your impact statements, right? And then I love to transition into an emotional piece where, we've got excitement, and then we transition and you've got the slow, sad music and you're like, we're leading into something. And it's like, because of you, children with cancer are now going to receive X of this, X of this, X of this. And then you've got the impact and you've got some of the kids that you benefit showing up on screen. And then you've got the mom crying and being like, without this organization, I don't know what we would be doing. I thank you guys so much. And then everyone's like, wow, that is so impactful. I can't believe it. So you lead with energy and then you end with impact. If you're doing video content, that's my best tip for your videographers. If you're leading with photos, make it so easy for people to share. So my team, we purchased a 360 photo booth. So you can do just photos. You can do the video that swirls around you and people are like, yeah. Make sure if you're doing a photo booth though, you've got the signs that literally say what the event is so that people, as they're posting these on their social, it's a huge hit, by the way, are like, oh, they're at so-and-so charity's event and blank. Because if you're giving that content out and it's great, but people don't really know, where they are, who they're supporting, it's not quite as impactful. But we also have the ability to put a logo on the bottom of our 360 photo booth for that organization so that it's already imprinted and stamped And the cool part is they go up, they put their phone number in, it texts them their video or their pictures, and they can post it right there. Another thing we want to see, event specific hashtags. And I want to see everybody having whatever your charity's at sign is on Instagram. Focus on your Instagram. Don't focus on sending everybody over to your Facebook and your TikTok and all this stuff. They're going to do one, and you don't need everybody to do everything. You can take that content and repurpose it. You can't exhaust the donors and like, I got 14 things to tag over here. But that signage should be everywhere. You should have little QR codes on tables that are like, scan here to follow us on Instagram and tag your photos. People have been doing that through COVID with looking at menus. So they're very used to scanning those QR codes now. And you want to make it easier to A, grow your follower count, and then B, take that content, get tagged, continue to repost it. Now you have access to it. You've saved it. You've put it on an event highlight on your Instagram, and your social team can go and download all those videos to then create another cool piece of video content from how successful your event was. So just repurposing what people are already enjoying to do, but also making it easy for them to do it through mobile. You don't want it to be, we're waiting for photography to get back this huge album, because now the moment is past.
Right, right. And you kind of led into my second point that I really held on to and always hold on to when I hear these types of presentations. It's impact, right? How quickly can you share impact? How soon can you get that out there? How much can you share? And that really needs to be a key component of any event strategy, is how are we doing this? How are we making sure, and how long and how often, and leveraging that impact data that we're going to gather as part of the event strategy and the follow-up. So you talked to it a little bit on as far as that social media or image and video strategy. What are some best practices on how soon can you get that out, or how long into the following year can you still leverage that impact? Because I know I see some of our clients all the way up until the following event, they're talking about the impact of last year's event. So if you could speak to that a little bit, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, for events that you're doing on a every year basis, like I said, it's typically your big galas, your big golf tournaments, whatever that is. You do want to leverage that success that you had the year before all the way into that next year. So at whatever you achieved in 2023, we want to be talking about in 2024, and we want to give our donors the ability to beat that, like, where is that benchmark and how can we get ahead of it? I love when you're able to visually put that on screen as you're doing, say, live auction, or you're doing fund a need, right? Fund a need. If you're not doing fund a need, everyone should be doing it. So a lot of people can't afford a $40,000 vacation to Italy that you did in your auction, right? But they can afford to give $100 or $1,000, and you need to give those opportunities. And I know with QGive, you can plug that in and you can literally see what your live progress is right there in real time. It's kind of like that thermometer, if you will, or,
Absolutely.
I can't think of the other thing, but that's
gamification in general, whether it's a thermometer or any other means by which to gamify it. Absolutely. I'm sorry, go ahead.
100%. And then, if I'm sitting on the fence and I was like, I don't know if I want to make another donation, but I see that you are so close to that goal, I'm like, okay, paddle up. Yep. It's time. I'm doing it. So making sure that you're taking advantage of your data in the moment, because if you're falling low, yeah, sure, that's embarrassing. It's not great, but you also are giving the audience the understanding that, like, hey, we got to do better. We got to do more. Like, it's time for us to step up here.
Yeah, absolutely.
They showed up. Like, I think the other part too is you show up to an event, a fundraising event, for a reason, right?
Yes.
You either got invited by someone or you really do care about the cause. So you've got a room of big hearts walking in, and it's not to exploit them, because what you're doing is what the world needs. It's to be able to maximize the impact of the nonprofit. But then once again, after you're done with that paddle raise, you have just provided 500 new, like, comfy cozies for chemo for kids who are battling cancer across 50 states.
Right. No, great stuff there. Danny, do we have any questions lined up?
Yeah, I will, as you were going through your 800-point survey,
I know, exhausting
for evaluating events, and you talk about nonprofits kind of developing their own version of that. Obviously, just starting out, you're probably not going to be able to put together an 800-point. That's years of research and experience doing events from your side. But when you're looking at that for nonprofits looking to get started with something like that, what are some key benchmarks that you say, if you're going to pick X amount of these things to look at, these are the things you need to watch?
I would say first, how we've got it sectioned out. So if you're taking notes right now, I want to make sure that you've got section 1, which is your pre-event. Within pre-event, you need to be tracking your communications and you need to be tracking logistics. Those are your 2 biggest parts. When it comes to the communications, a couple of benchmarks in that section that I would say are really important is definitely your email strategy. Making sure that all of your technology is locked in and loaded, and then making sure that your messaging is done. Is your nonprofit purpose clear in the messaging, clear in all of the communications, and is it well branded as it's going out? If your stuff looks like it came from 1994, I hate to tell you, but your nonprofit needs a facelift because this is 2023. It is the digital age. You've got to invest in making sure things are representing visually all of the hard work that you guys do on the day-to-day basis within your communities. And then for logistics, I would say making sure you're tracking budget, that you've got clear outlines of what that looks like. Your event plan, if it's an indoor outdoor, you need to have a weather plan. You always have to have a backup. What your ideal guest count is. So you can say, last year we had this year we're aiming for this, and then what was reality? Our next section is your during event. So you're tracking communications, you're tracking logistics, which not as big of a deal, but like in logistics, for example, we've got AV connections. The worst is when that hasn't been tested and then someone gets up and they can't move through a slide or their thermometer isn't working. And that stuff, as we know, it happens. So making sure you test all that pre-event. Guest experience. So this is one that we take a lot of heart to. I mean, this gets extensive and it pretty much will apply across the board for any nonprofit. Your entrance, your check-in process, your ticketing, your donation ability, your programs, photo opportunities, the flow of your room. Think about it from the donor. If things are really hard to get to, or if it's a buffet and I've got to go over here to get my food and then auctions over here. Okay, is that good? Is that like a natural flow of events? How am I maximizing the most people seeing everything that we have on display? Thinking about that kind of stuff. Your raffle item presentation. Is it really clear what these things are? I will say, I love you, QGive, but we like to have our descriptions way bigger and way bolder than what you can just print out from the system, because I don't need people like squinting if it's dark to be like, what is this all offer? And most technology does, not a great job at this, but we then take our QR code, make it huge from our auction items on the QGive platform, slap that sucker right in the middle with a giant, big poster board that explains exactly what's in that package. And I'm telling you, it makes a really big difference because you don't need people struggling to, make a bid on something or understand it. These are 2 silly ones, but bathrooms and garbage. If we've all been to events and we've seen garbage overflowing, you go to Target and you see the garbage is overflowing outside of the store and you're like, that is so gross. It happens at events too. That stuff leaves such a bad thought in people's heads of just like, this was kind of a dingy, dirty event. Or if they had to wait in line forever to get to the restroom. It's not Disneyland. None of us want to wait in line. So keeping that kind of stuff in mind. And then your programming, giving that scores. If you had a keynote speaker, how did they do? How long were they on stage? Did they go over their time? Tracking those little details. Did you guys do a good job of utilizing photos and videos? If you're not utilizing video content to tell your impact story, you're definitely missing out on that, because that's where people who've benefited from whatever you're doing can really see firsthand. We work with an organization called the SEAL Legacy Foundation that benefits families of fallen Navy SEALs. And these videos, I mean, I've seen them all. I cry every time I'm sitting there and I'm like, I've already seen this like 8 times and I still can't stop crying. It's so impactful. And then it leads you into, this is what we're raising money for. Let's do this. And it opens up a different level of generosity. So tracking that. Finally, I'm going to wrap this up. Post-event, you've got your sections on comms, logistics, and this is going to be also where you're doing your financial review. Did we hit our fundraising goal? How does it stack up? That kind of thing.
As you've worked through this, did you find that there are certain benchmarks that you can notice? I think it's obvious to find success in, oh, we reached our goal, there's success there. you know you failed at something if people are really angry, but are there some sort of middle markers of like, well, this could have been better that you found to be kind of glaring once you start diving in?
I would say the biggest thing that could always be better is the technology. So many times we've got it locked and loaded, and then there's just so many people. I don't understand the app. Oh, I don't understand the mobile like browser version. So having people there to help get people over that hurdle is critical. And it's just human nature. You know what I mean? Especially with the older donor base. It's like they aren't sitting on their phones with 85 different apps for everything like people our age are doing. So we have to be really conscious of that to help streamline and make that experience better versus making it frustrating. It's like those commercials you see on like, teaching your parents how to use their phone or their TV and stuff. Like, think about it that way. You got to do it with such care and kindness, because it gets frustrating when you want to be able to do something and you're feeling like, why is this so hard? Why is this so difficult?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Layla. We put a big emphasis of that on during our onboarding and training for our clients, providing as much of information and as many resources as you can to not just your staff, but your volunteers or anybody who's going to be engaging folks as they're entering or exiting the event, because the first touch and the last touch tend to be the ones that matter the most. So making sure that that's a smooth transition to using and leveraging the technology that they have is a key component to how we help folks train their teams, and we train them to kind of use the system. So couldn't agree more that can fall flat and really leave a bad taste if you don't do it right.
100%. Another little thing that I love when organizations do this is when it is time for people to leave and they've retrieved if they've bid on auctions or raffles, they retrieve those items and it's towards the exit. And you've got the key players in your nonprofit standing there shaking hands, thanking people so much for attending, and that it was so great to see them. That leaves such a good impression, because most of the time, and I'm so guilty of this because I'm like, let's go, let's go, let's go. It's tear down time. Is that the staff is like, we have so much to do and we've got, based on the venue, like an hour to do it. Like everybody goes into work mode, but the event is not over until everyone is gone. So make sure you leave that last touch point at a really high note, because a handshake and a smile and a thank you goes so far when it comes to people spending money and time with you.
Excellent
Absolutely.
point.
And so much of us spend so much time virtually now. So many people work virtually. We spend so much time on our phones looking at screens that we kind of underestimate how much that personal interaction means to us until it happens. It's almost like we all forget and we're like, oh, I forgot. I really do love interacting with people. And it does mean more when somebody has that
so
face-to-face
good.
interaction with me. It's a completely different experience.
It is. And that's why we focus so much on live events and we don't focus on virtual events, because like that doesn't get me out of bed in the morning. Like, oh, a virtual fundraiser. Like, I want to do the things that I'm passionate and good at. And so that's why we lean so hard into making the live event experience. I always tell my team, we want our clients' events to feel like a Ritz-Carlton level of service. We're not aiming to be the Holiday Inn Express, which nothing against the Holiday Inn Express, but they aren't greeting you by name. They aren't sending, a chocolate to your room or whatever it might be, or offering you a welcome glass of champagne when you check in. It's just different. We all know that. So our donors deserve the highest level of care and attention to detail from these organizations that they support. And I mean, it's kind of, the audit makes it that you can't lose. You know what I mean? If you care at this level to track this type of data, your organization truly will never end up being in a bad spot.
And it's so easy to underestimate what those little touches can mean, and those little small points. It's the minute details. It's the things that we think to ourselves, oh, it's a small thing that will really make or break an experience or an event, or how well something runs.
Exactly. Another tip that I've got for nonprofits too, because I know a lot of the communications aspect can feel really daunting, especially if you're a small team, but the 2 weeks leading up to your event and the week after your event, don't have anything else on your guys' schedule except for event-based communications of making sure everything's good leading in. And then afterwards, making sure that every thing on that to-do list was done and done properly. And that really helps mentally streamline stuff. Because like I said, I know most of us are like, okay, that's done. And now I need to start focusing on whatever's upcoming next, or maybe it's Giving Tuesday, or, but giving that buffer and building that into your schedule creates just a better experience for your staff as well.
Absolutely. Take a moment to enjoy all the hard work that you've done as well, because I've known many event planners and many people who have spend time dug into those things and all the stress and hard work that goes into those. And I just like, that's my thing that I love, being the person on the outside who gets to go to people who are planning events and go, don't forget to enjoy all the hard work that you've put into this and how wonderful the product is that you've created.
It's so great. And I have a question for you guys on the QGive side. So we mainly utilize all of the event software, but I know there's other things that we can tie in through the QGive suite to help with post-event. So can you guys just highlight some of that for everybody on here and for myself?
I'm happy to. Yeah, I mean, Danny, it may help with the visual of the graphic that we showed at the beginning of the presentation, kind of the offering that we have. So in addition to the event management, the full suite that we have for auctions, we also do a ton of other digital fundraising components. So I don't know if you're pulling that up, Danny, but the donation forms and standard event registrations that are non-auction or peer-to-peer. But then we also have a full suite of peer-to-peer solutions that can help your organization if you're looking to acquire new donors or turn an existing event into something that has a little bit more reach through the peer-to-peer components. And then, of course, text fundraising is another great communication piece that I think layers in on top of everything, right? When you're looking at ways to better engage across an event audience, text fundraising could be that follow-up component, that lead up to component, or even the day of component. So all of that is kind of woven into our offering to help with that communication piece and just keeping people as informed as they can be, right? That's a key component of any good event success is information and making sure that you're reiterating what the expectations are and setting those clearly for the audience and the team that's running the show. So I hope that was what you were looking for, Leila, but if there's anything else that you were wondering about, I'm happy to chat about it.
Can people utilize the text fundraising component all year long? So if it's Giving Tuesday, pushing out to their base, hey, it's Giving Tuesday. This year, we're trying to raise $400,000 to benefit blank. In your Giving Tuesday campaigns, please always do that stuff as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the text fundraising is embedded within certain parts of our event management tool, but also as a standalone. So oftentimes it's really just used as that one-way communication tool. But then a lot of our clients have moved, especially since the pandemic kind of forced our hands, have moved into a much more engagement and an ask use case, right, where they're literally sending appeals via SMS, and while it's it's not going to be your top earner from a revenue standpoint, it's certainly going to introduce new relationships and offer another way for folks to give and support your organization. So yeah, definitely something that can be included as part of different strategies throughout the year during those different seasonal initiatives like Giving Tuesday or as you lead into year-end fundraising for this last month.
Another thing that I love about the texting is that if you just put together a really great new impact video or a testimonial video of someone who's benefited from what your organization does, you can push that out via text and say, hey, I just wanted to share with you Susie's story about how we were able to help her kid who's been battling stage 4 cancer, and then link the YouTube video right there. That's a great way of not asking for money, but just being able to keep your donors along for the journey of the work that you're doing day in and day out. Because so often our donors don't hear from us unless we're asking them for money or to attend something. And we need to get into the habit of our donors are our friends and we want to communicate with them and we want to share our successes. And if we've hit a point where we're finding ourselves at a crossroads where we really need help with something, be able to reach out and say, hey, we're really close to being able to help Susie's daughter finish out her cancer battle. This is what we're looking for. And it could vary up the asks, be like, it could just be gift cards, right? You can send virtual Amazon gift cards over here, or if you're able to donate just $25, that would really help push us over the edge. And then once you hit that goal, don't forget to send a text back and say, thanks to all of you, we've been able to accomplish this. Versus most of the time we accomplish it, we get back to doing our mission-based work and we forget to say, hey, because of, your small donation and participation here, we were able to do that. So I think that's a great feature to be able to utilize all year round. But of course, you don't want to overdo it and annoy people. So, keeping that nice balance.
Yeah, I mean the takeaway for me there in that comment you just made is revenue is always a component of any fundraising initiative, right? That's your goal. But if you're not focusing on the 3 A's of appreciation, awareness, and acquisition, you're doing something wrong when you're building your event strategy. Those have to be key components, right? And I think our tools, specifically highlighting, the text fundraising, can allow for that, can allow for more of that impact reporting after the event, or again, expectation setting leading up to the event. So thank you for emphasizing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Text fundraising is a great way. It's low lift for the most part. It's something that you can reach a lot of people without extensive amounts of time and effort. So throughout the year, if you're hitting a busy point too, it's a great way to re-engage. And I know, especially for younger donors like myself, like a text is the best way to get a hold of me, because if I see a link, I'm just going to click it and go, and my attention span is going to be able to stick on for that one. And I know that's a big thing. If it's too many steps or too many things, how many things do you bail on because it's too complicated, or it jumps through a million different hoops and you're like, I give up. I'll get back to this later. And then how many times do you actually end up going back to it? And that's where so many donors get lost.
100%. The easier it is, the better. The easier the ask. And in your communications, you want to make it conversational. You don't want it to seem like a corporate robot is either texting or emailing, because these are your friends. Your donors are your friends that you are, in a hand-holding relationship with. So just the form of how you communicate is really important. But another thing that I love when people get tripped up on the Givey app, we take those PDFs that you guys provide to us with the instructions, we blow them up onto huge boards from FedEx office, we put them on easels at check-in, and we do like a lot of these. It's like basically a QGive commercial at this point. But it makes it so much easier because like, oh, okay. We're like, over here, you'll see this board. If we're like slammed at check-in, all you got to do is scan this QR code and it's going to take care of everything else. Put in your ticket number and then you're good to go. And that helps streamline too, because they're like, oh, wow, this giant board standing in front of me. Like, I can do that.
Yeah, that's not the first time I've heard that of clients doing that. That's great.
Yeah.
I don't want to cut anyone off, but before people get too busy and need to cut out for other things, I do want to launch our opt-in poll. So if anybody on the webinar did not get a chance to opt in when you registered today, and after hearing Leila share so many wonderful things, you want to find more about Philanthropy United, opt in here, and I'll make sure that she gets your information and she can reach out to you, and you guys can get started looking at your 2024 events together. Perfect. Well, I want to give everyone the opportunity. If you do have any questions, you still have a chance to put those in. We're not cutting anything off quite yet. But I'll take the opportunity to say thank you again, Leila, so much for hopping on today and for sharing all of this. I know events can be a very daunting topic for a lot of people because, like you've shared, there's so many different components to it and it can be very overwhelming. So I really love your 800-point questionnaire that you have. It's it's extensive, but it breaks it down in a way that makes it feel so much more tangible to look at an event and really dive into it. It's not an easy thing to do. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got it plugged into a software system. So when we're there and we're on a either phone or an iPad, we're able to quantify quickly as we're going through the event. So that's definitely an option for folks as well. Like you don't have to have like a physical piece of paper and like sit there and give it a score. But if you are going to do an audit for your event, guys, try and do it in real time. Have someone who's kind of taking all of that in. And then for your meeting after your event, have everybody go through the entire thing together, because people are going to rate different aspects differently and they're going to have different experiences. And you want to be able to get those different data points too and see, all right, what is the average score that we're getting on our pre-event communication or, the donor experience based on the feedback that people got. Because it's hard to put data behind something that's just so, hard to track. You know what I mean? Like you can track how much money you raised and that's pretty much it, and how many tickets you sold.
Absolutely. And you can't base everything off of one person whose experience wasn't great, because I feel like no matter what you do, whether it's webinars, putting out content, events, there's always going to be one person who certain aspects of it weren't to their liking. But I think zeroing in, like you're talking about, on that average, what did most people seem to experience? What was the majority of people's experience and ability to interact with and engage with the event that you're putting on is going to be key to really moving forward with identifying what's best for you and your organization.
100%. This makes me think of a really fun fundraiser one person did. It was it was like a game night, and they had set up different games throughout the evening. It was free to attend. So you had darts, you had like ring toss, all the things you kind of see at a carnival. And then you had to make a donation in order to play those games. And it created such a fun atmosphere along the way. And then you had, I think they just stuck with raffle. So they kept it pretty simple because you know, not everything needs an auction. And yeah, it was great. It was a great way to get a lot of data of new people. It was a great way to have fun. So that was a great method of friend raising and leading into the larger event. So if you're doing a big gala, guys, do smaller pre-events that truly are just to hype up and get more people in the door for that really big one. Because there's so many resources that go into throwing a giant event that you want to make sure you're maximizing that lead up time and getting as many, hopefully, new people too in that door. And people aren't going to come if they haven't had an experience.
Well, we're winding down on the hour. Brendan, is there anything you want to add before we go?
Just another thank you, Leila. This was great as usual. I appreciate it. And thank you all the audience who was able to attend and stick around. I appreciate you guys coming and learning more from Leila today.
Yeah, thank you
Absolutely.
guys. And I hope everybody has a good holiday.
Thanks,
Thank
you too.
you as well. We'll see
Bye,
you all
guys.
next time. Bye.